Good morning. Welcome to Granny's Legacy Patterns at our new time, Wednesdays at 11 Central. Today I'm excited to dig in and get started on a two-part series. So for 2 weeks we'll be doing this on dish towel embroidery. This is a topic that we receive a lot of questions on, which is kind of odd because it's extremely basic and really fun and enjoyable. And if you think of some of the art forms that have held true over the years, dish towel embroidery is one of them. It's one of those things that we've been doing. Our grandmas did it, our great grandmas did it. It's just one of those art forms that just keeps on going. And so today I'm excited to help you get started and talk about the first steps, you might call it. We'll talk about preparing your dish towel. We'll talk about transferring your design and a couple different options for that. And then we will talk about coloring and adding color to the dish towels. That is the one thing I forgot were colored pencils.
Where are they?
They're upstairs on your desk.
Okay.
I thought I had everything, but by the time we get there, we'll be ready to go.
The ones that to the can.
Yeah. So we will go ahead and talk a little bit about getting started. So everybody knows, we talked a little bit about the history of dish towel diary. One of the first things I remember ever learning to do with my hands is embroider dish towels. And not necessarily even starting with the dish towel. My great grandmother, Granny, who our business is kind of in honor of, she was the one that got me started on embroidery. I remember going over to her house in the summer when we were home from school and it was just really hot. And I would sit on her sofa and she would bring out this oval Whitman sampler type tin that had handles on it like a picnic basket. And I remember it had beautiful embroidery punched or stamped on the outside and painted on. And it was full of floss. Completely full of floss, little spools of crochet thread, anything that you could use for embroidery work. And I remember going through and digging through her pile of work basket magazines and finding just a little design. I don't remember what the design was, just like a little pig or something. And we transferred that to a scrap of muslin, and then she just kind of turned me loose. She taught me how to stem stitch and do a French knot and just kind of let me go. And that's kind of how I got started with dish towel. That is how I got started with dish towel embroidery. And then fast forward to 30 some years later, we're bringing it back and it is just as fun and enjoyable. It is a great project to take with you. It is a great project to just sit and do at home. It travels. It's just such a cool thing and a neat thing to keep your hands busy. So when we do dish towel embroidery, the very first thing we need to do is wash our towel. It might be tempting just to jump in and get started. Thank you. But washing the towel is such an important part, primarily because it does shrink a lot. The towels that we're primarily working on are cotton, and that's what makes them so great for dish towels. However, cotton shrinks so much. So I have one towel here that I have already pre-washed, and I have one that is just off the shelf. I grabbed purple because I thought if you're not a black person, purple might also be a really pretty option for stitching your design on. So I'm just gonna kind of hold this up quick and show you what happens when you wash it. I think this is just the best way out, is just to show. So you can see it does get considerably smaller, about an inch both ways kind of. If I were to lay this flat, it would be a better, because I think there's fold lines and stuff. So about an inch on both sides you lose. And when you shrink, or when you go to wash it for the first time with your embroidery on it, your embroidery might do weird things if it's not pre-shrunk. So we want to make sure it's pre-shrunk and ready to go. So I just washed it last night with this one here. I washed last night with a load of towels at my house because I wanted to make sure it shrunk as much as it will. So I washed it on hot with a load of bath towels, and so it's all good to go. And then with a hot iron, I use a little bit of starch or magic sizing, and I just ironed it out really good until all the wrinkles are gone. And just a note about ironing, this is white, and as wool artists, sometimes our irons can get a little bit gunky at the bottom. Before you start ironing on your towels, you'll want to make sure your iron is clean. Trust me on this one. This is been there, done that. This iron is pretty clean. but I should probably be cleaning it again pretty soon. We carry, it's called Magic Iron Cleaner. And it really is magic. We have tried everything over the years to clean irons. We've tried home remedies, we've tried chemicals, we've tried every product that stores sell. This works. Magic Iron Cleaner. It's super inexpensive. We have it on our website, grannieslegacypatterns.com, and it is amazing. It's about the consistency of toothpaste, and you just take a cotton rag. I use an old washcloth. Just squeeze like an inch on a cotton rag, turn your iron on as hot as it goes without steam, and then just work that toothpaste or that Magic Iron Cleaner until the bottom of your iron is clean. You might need to add a little more depending on how dirty your iron is. You might need to add more or less, but you'll want to make sure you have a clean iron before you start your dish towel embroidery. Otherwise, when you're working with steams and starch and stuff like that, it is really easy for that to transfer the gross from the bottom of your iron to your dish towel, and we don't want to do that. I've been there. So clean iron, start with a clean iron. And then because this is cotton, it does come out of the wash relatively wrinkly, which is why I recommended using an ironing aid. We just happen to have this here. It's a medium, medium starch. Sizing works. The Magic Company has an ironing spray that works amazing, but a little bit of spray will help you get it really nice. And then just a nice hot steam iron. And if you are afraid of getting anything dirty or your iron puking at all, I recommend using a Pressing Affair pressing sheet just to lay over top of it. And that way, if anything were to happen, if your iron were to spit up, this works kind of like, I always refer to it as like duck feathers. It just kind of repels the moisture unless you keep ironing over it and grinding it in. So if anything were to puke, it happens on your pressing sheet and not your project. So another great use for a Pressing Affair. So once you have your dish towel ironed and flat and ready to go, we are ready to move on to transferring the design. So you will need, I thought I had a pattern sitting right here, perfect. You will need your pattern now. And always, before you start anything, I always recommend completely reading the instructions in the pattern, just from start to finish. That way you can kind of comprehend what the process is and when each step will kind of be taking place. So always start by reading your pattern. So transferring the design, the pattern is provided for 2 methods of design transfer. And this kind of encompasses any way possible you could ever dream of transferring your design. So in the pattern, it is provided the right way, so the way you read it, and then also in mirror image. If you are using a light box and marking pens to transfer your design, you'll be using just the one that looks normal. If you plan to use iron transfer pens, you'll be using the one that looks backwards or mirror imaged. So today I'm going to show you a hybrid method I use that actually combines both methods, and it's kind of just trial and error. I've come across this method and I think it was pretty darn cool. So to save time, I have already did all the marking on my pattern, but I'll talk a little bit about the iron transfer pens first here before we get started. So we have found that sublimation pens work great with fabric. And I always say, if you have weird questions about is it permanent, is it not, that kind of thing, always do a test first on your textile. Whatever you're using it on, if you're nervous about how permanent it may or may not be, run a test on your end. That way we know that you're for sure. I'd hate to tell you one thing and then you use a different textile and it's different. But these work great for dish towels, and we carry a set of 12 and then also a set of 7. So there's 2 different options. And so you just take, and I like to use the color that corresponds with the color thread that I'm going to be using. So you can look at the picture on your pattern cover and just kind of start tracing, and you just trace right over the lines. So for the lettering, I have used black because I'm going to be stitching those with kind of a black. For the word lilacs, I used purple. And then for my lilac blossoms, I used purple. For the leaves, I used green. And then once again for lettering, I used black. And then I actually used black around the edge when I traced it, however it'll be stitched with green. So you just take, and I can show you just a little bit here too. And it's like a felt tip, a fine tip felt tip pen. I don't know if you can zoom in on that a little bit. And then you just go to your pattern and start tracing directly over the lines with your felt tip pen. And you'll do that for all the elements on there, changing colors as needed. And then when I'm ready to transfer my design, I take a scissor. Oh, one other tip. This is just a tip from Katie. I like to have a straight edge, oh, sorry Dad, a straight edge handy. And that is so when I get to things that are straight lines, I can transfer them with a straight line. So when I did the lettering, I laid my ruler right on the top like that, and I transferred the top of the T, the E, the F, and then I moved it down a notch and did it the middle of the H, the E, the F, and then I went sideways and did all my sideways lines. And then I also used it when I did the border around the edge too. So straight edge, if you don't have one handy, also a very good tool to throw in your little dish towel embroidery box. So then I find it easiest to cut this out a little bit, leaving 1/4 to 1/8 inch around the edge. And this just helps with positioning it to make sure you get it positioned straight. And try to cut as straight as possible. You could use a paper cutter or rotary cutter, but I don't find it that exact, but just kind of get rid of the extra paper. Are there any questions or anything as I go? Or, we have a quiet crowd today. And then we line it up on our dish towel. And speaking from previous experience, you'll want to make sure you locate the top of your towel. And on the done woven towels that we carry that are really nice quality, they always have a hang loop on the top. So we have a hang loop, so I want to make sure that that's the top of my towel. And I want to put my design on the bottom of the towel. So there we go. So I have the top and the bottom. And now I get to make a decision. And actually I'm going to let Mom make the decision. Do we want the design in the middle? Oh, that was a quick decision. Or the left or the right, but she picked the middle. So then I'm going to take here, and just so I find the middle quick, I'm just going to finger press a little crease in it so I know where the middle is. And actually I'm going to put a little pin at the bottom so I know where the middle of my towel is. And I can see a crease. I'm not sure if that's showing up on camera. And I'm going to take this, and I'm not going to do a heavy crease, but just enough where I can get it lined up with my, there we go, like that. And then I'm going to use a few glass head pins or metal head pins. You won't want to use plastic head pins or the flower pins or any of those really cute pins. Make sure they have a glass or a metal head, otherwise they'll melt. And I'm putting them in at a really flat angle, just kind of holding this in place in 4 places here. And that's just so the transfer doesn't slip when I'm ironing it. I suppose if you're brave, you wouldn't have to do that, but I'm gonna get my iron going here. A hot, dry iron. So I'm taking it as hot as it goes and making sure that there's no steam. My iron is set to no steam. So as hot as it goes and with no steam. And this is our favorite Rowenta iron. We love them here at Granny's Legacy for wool. They work great for wool, for cotton. They have a ton of steam holes. We carry them on our website, and we hear nothing but great things. So it's just a good iron, all around iron. They work great for clothes too. Yesterday I got to work and I noticed there was a wrinkle from my seatbelt in my shirt, so I used our studio iron to iron my shirt before anybody got here. So once you feel that it's hot and ready to go, I like to, instead of like working the whole thing, I kind of like to just start at one corner. And I want to keep my iron moving so that I don't burn and scorch. Actually, here would be another great time to use your pressing affair so you don't burn or do anything damage to your towel. It does take quite a bit of time and heat to really transfer that design well. So you just kind of, in your mind, sing a couple songs, plan your supper, write your mental grocery list, and just kind of work over the entire design. And this is, as you work, you can kind of start seeing the design seep through to the back of your project. And then one thing I like to do, from my experience, you can't over iron it. That being said, you don't want to burn your cotton, but it does take maybe a little longer than you'd think to transfer. So then when you think that you just kind of want to check it, what I do is I just take one pin out and peel it back, and I can see that it is working, but not quite there yet. Put the pin back and keep going. And if you think it's not going to work, just keep ironing, because it does work. So. And the benefit to this method, as I said, I'd kind of talk about a couple methods. The benefit to this method is that you know that you're tracing. You're not going to trace and get a jagged line or something on your towel when you're tracing it directly to your towel. So you have a little bit of control if you were to mess up. I have found in the past that if I mess up, I can take a piece of paper tape and cover up my mess up and just trace over top of that, and it works. But you just want to be a little careful that you test ironing that paper tape before, so you know it's not going to melt or do anything weird to your project. But that would be one of the workarounds for if you were to goof. There we go. We can see that we're doing good. We're almost there. Ooh, look at that. Can you see that on camera? It's coming along nice. We're almost there. Almost there. Let's check our lettering up here. Oh, we're there. We did it. Okay. Then we're going to take our pins out. Or the rest of our pins. I have pins everywhere for some reason. There we go. And you can see that we have successfully transferred the design. Now, as you can see, there might be some spots that are a little bit light or where a line maybe didn't get transferred quite right. There's two ways to fix that. The first is you can just get a marking pen and just, when you get to that point in stitching, just kind of eyeball it. If you're not comfortable with that, I'll show you how my hybrid method works. Because when I sit down to stitch, I want to be ready to stitch. I don't want to be anything in my way or it come up with any sort of problem or hiccup or anything like that. I just want to sit down and go. I don't want to have to problem solve. So what I like to do is right when I'm done transferring like this, I go to my light box. And these are the Caterpillar light boxes. We carry them in 3 sizes, and there's a couple different models, chargeable, battery, no battery, different sizes, ones that fit in like a purse or a backpack, all the way up to the large studio model we have here. They all come with this clear cutting mat that you can use with it, which is really nice sometimes for fussy cutting or things like that, but we won't really need that for dish towels, so I'm going to set it off to the side here. And then I'm going to take, and these do have 3 light settings, so that's low, medium, and high, and I'm going to place my pattern. So the one that's the right side up, I'm going to place on my light box, and then I'm going to position this right over top of it. And this will give me the flexibility to say that didn't transfer dark enough. I want that line there to be darker. And in that case, you can line it up. And then with the micron pens, and we carry them in, probably 12 or 13 colors, a rainbow of colors we carry the micron pens in. So once again, you can match your line with the color that you'll be using. And then in this case, my outside line didn't transfer very well right here. I can just go, and now it's there and ready when I go. I also did not transfer the little dashes in the middle of all the flowers because in my mind, I just do those. If you're more comfortable transferring them, you can. Then I had one flower over here that didn't transfer very well. So I'm going to grab a purplish pen and just kind of go over that. So it gives you the flexibility just to kind of go back any area that you feel didn't transfer as well as you would like it to. So that's the hybrid, the transfer, and then going back with the light box and correcting anything you want darker. Also, if you say I don't need an iron transfer, I have a light box, I'm going to get some microns, and in that case you would just place your pattern that's right side, you would just place it on your light box, position your towel over it, and then just take your micron pens and just start transferring. So that's how you do it with just a light box as well. So next we're going to turn off the light box and talk about adding color. This is a question that people ask a lot. How did you add color to that? How do I do that? That's so cool. So we'll talk about that a little bit. We recommend using Prismacolor soft core colored pencils. And the reason why the Prismacolor soft core is because they're a very high quality color pencil, and the lead is a little bit soft, which makes them ideal for coloring. A little bit of that pigment kind of sinks down into the fiber of the textile, and they just work great. So we recommend the Prismacolor soft core. I can't say that other brands won't work, but I know these work, and we highly recommend them. So, and then you just find the color you'd like to use. In this case, I will start with my lilacs, and what I like to do is keep a piece of scratch paper close by. And in this case, I might just color right on this. That way I can see. And I audition colors. Like that's kind of pretty. Maybe a little pinker than I'd like to see. Ooh, I like that. That's a really nice plummy purple. I kind of like that. So I'm going to put this one back because I like that one better. Let's see what this is. And I just, this might be the winner. Oh, that or that one. Let's see. What did I do last time? I think I did that one, but... and then if we've used colored pencil in the pattern, on the stitching page, it'll have a key and show exactly what colors we used. But you don't have to do what we do, which is why, ooh, this is the one I'm using. I don't know if it's the one I'm using the first time, but I'm using PC1008 for my flowers. And then you just take, I find that a slightly dull pencil colors best. If it's freshly sharpened, I would take and either color the sharp end off or just knock it off a little bit. And then you just start coloring. I like to color with circles because I find that it doesn't have an edge. Where if you do straight lines, I find I always get like a dark edge. So I just color with circles. And it's kind of fun because you can also shade a little bit too. So I can make this big open flower a little bit darker maybe than some of the other ones, so you can get some real dimension with your design. So I think I'm gonna make this one a little bit darker. And then maybe this one a little bit lighter. So you can really be creative with your coloring. And this one I'm gonna go a little darker, and it just makes some nice definition when you add shading. I'm going to try to do them all in a clump here so that when I go to do ceiling, I don't have to color the whole thing. So you can just get creative kind of with dark and light. You could even use different colors of purple and mix different colors and make it a really realistic looking variegated. Lilacs really do kind of have, when they bloom, the top of the cone and the bottom of the cone are different shades. So you could really get creative and do realistic things if you wanted to with your flower. So what I color here, are there any questions, Mom, that you had come through?
I see no questions.
Okay.
I think that you can always look at a picture if you need to see what color, how to,
Yep.
what's dark and what's light.
And one thing to be cautious of is your coloring. If you do too much coloring, I want to say ink, but the lead or whatever will get to a point where it won't like sink into your fabric anymore. And if you get too much on there, it'll start to drift. I call it drifting, where like the dust of it kind of flakes over or it rubs on your finger as you're coloring. So just kind of be cautious of that as you're going. So
Have you tried crayons?
Mom has had some experience with crayons and fabric. You've done crayons, haven't you?
I have, yes. I don't think there's quite as color fast as this, and you have to iron them really well afterwards with paper towels or whatever, but yes, they do give you a little bit color. When you put the jacquard extender on this is really color fast when you wash it.
Yeah, and we'll get to that in the next step here. We'll talk about color fast. So as you can see, I'm trying to do some light spots and some dark spots so that as I go, I get a little bit of variety. Let me go with this one a little bit darker. I'm not going to completely color the whole thing. You kind of get the picture of what's going on here. I'll have one of my little helpers do it after school today. And so once you get all of your color added, and in this case it'll be your cone of flowers or your lilac bloom and your leaves. Let's do the leaves quick though. Those might be kind of easy. That's maybe a little bit too yellow. This one, I like this one, which is why it's blunt. Everybody likes this one.
What do you use to sharpen your pencils?
I have an electric pencil sharpener on my desk that my girls use for their school number 2 Ticonderogas, and that is what I use to sharpen them. Just a regular old sharpener. That being said, it has different settings, so it's set to not do it too deep of a angle when it cuts. And one thing I like to do with the leaves is where the vein is, I like to make it a little bit darker, just to kind of add some character. So I'm just going to kind of swirl down a little right where the vein is going to go there and make that just a little bit darker than the rest of the leaf. And that just kind of will add a little bit of shadowing there when you actually stitch the vein.
I do not know about crayons with the color extender. It's not,
You'd have to try it.
Yeah,
Yep.
I have not experimented and done anything that way.
Yeah. Crayons, it might be a little bit different because it's really waxy.
Yep.
This green was PC 909. So next, we're going to pretend we have everything colored and ready to go. And I like to put a blotter underneath where I'm going to be doing the painting or the textile extender. So in this case, I'm just using a piece of paper. And then we're going to get our textile extender, and it looks white, but it dries clear. And then a nice little paintbrush. This is just an inexpensive flat edge watercolor paintbrush. It doesn't take fancy brushes for this, it's pretty easy. And then I like to just peel back just a corner of my lid. You could do the whole thing if you wanted, but in my mind this reduces the mess. And put a little bit on my brush at a time, and I'll wait, is the camera caught up? Perfect. And then I just start at one end and just kind of work my way to the other. And it takes a little, it takes quite a bit. You really want it to be able to sink in. And you can see as you go, it kind of, I don't want to say dissolves that coloring, but it really makes it look kind of watercolory. Blends it, maybe is the word I'm looking for. But what this does is it kind of seals, I shouldn't say it's kind of, it does. It seals your color in and makes it so it can be made color fast.
So, did you have a notion kit put together for this class?
We did. We have a notion kit put together, and it contains the colored pencils, the iron transfer pens, the colorless extender, and the paintbrush. So you get a nice good start with that.
Did you put something under to pull the extender down?
It's just a piece of paper.
Okay.
Yep. And I'm not really sure it's pulling it down, and more that it is just kind of protecting my work surface from it saturating. It goes through pretty easily. It's a pretty thin liquid. It saturates easily, I think would be the word I'm looking for.
So you're just protecting your surface underneath with piece of paper?
Yep.
Okay.
I wouldn't want this on my, it comes off of Gluon, I found out this morning, but you wouldn't really want it on your table or anything like that. And then you just kind of keep going and just color or paint everywhere you have color. And so in this session, we'll talk a little bit about setting yet, but we'll actually do it next session because it's not dry yet. But we'll talk about it. And then
Their way to fix an oops if you color outside the lines.
I think you just have to be careful. Be creative, add another bloom or
Yeah.
make your leaf a little bigger.
Make your leaf a little
Yep.
bigger and say, I meant to do that.
Yep.
I wanted a fat, chubby leaf. Or make your flower a little chubby.
A little poofier or add a petal
add
that fell
another
off.
petal, flower petal, sure.
Yep.
Sometimes those are happy little mistakes.
Yep. So then it's pretty easy to see where you've been because like I said, it makes it look really washy and really kind of watercolory and cool looking. I got too much on my brush to go that little bud. There we go. And you want to be careful a little bit. This doesn't make it extremely hard to stitch through, but it does add a little bit of resistance. So you don't want to go like completely wild and crazy and just paint everything. You want to try to stick within your lines a little bit. And then, so I would keep going until everything is painted. And then you want to just let that sit for a while. I would leave it sit for a couple hours. I like to hang it up like on a clothesline or hang it over a chair so that air can get to both sides. Because as you can see, the liquid does go through a little bit, and that way the air can get to both sides, and you want it to be extremely 120% dry before you move on to setting your extender. So the extender is on there, but if you were to wash it at this point, your ink would still wash off because the extender has not been set. And so to set it, we'll actually set it in our next session, but I'll talk about it a little bit. All we're going to do is take it back over to our ironing surface, cover it with a pressing affair, and then just really with a high heat, just the instructions say 30 seconds. So we're just gonna keep moving that heat over and over and over and over and over and over and over until it's been really, really, really heated through for quite a while. Because that setting that extender is what makes it so that it's less, I don't want to say permanent, because if you were to wash this every week for 10 years, obviously it's going to fade. But it makes it so that the coloring stays put. So today we've talked about preparing your towel. We talked about washing, ironing, cleaning our iron, the importance of that. And then we moved and talked about transferring our design using iron transfer pens and then also micron pens. And then we talked and moved on to coloring and applying the textile extender. So next week we will meet back here for session 2, same time, 11 o'clock Wednesday, and we will talk, one more question? Can I finish my sentence first? We'll talk about setting the textile extender, and then we'll move into stitching, and we'll talk about the stitches used for this towel, and we'll talk about hoops and whether to hoop or not to hoop, and why I don't hoop and why some people do, and just make sure how to hide our knots a little bit, because we get a lot of questions on what does I don't do it because my back's gonna look messy, so we'll conquer that, and anything stitch related. So we had one question here before we go.
Do the pencils blend together?
I've never really used two colors on the same, like where they would be that close to each other. I think if I had two colors in one shape, I would try to paint this color and paint that color. Otherwise, I really wouldn't say it would muddy together too much. So, okay. Thank you for joining me here today. So your assignment this week is to transfer, color, and then put your extender on. So have fun, happy stitching, and we'll see you again next week.